What's poppin', everybody? We are back with part 2 of my official running back rankings. Today we're going to be touching on 7 from 12. Apologies if I sound a little quiet. It's like 1:30 in the morning. It's the only time I can record. I even got a little coffee to match the hat with the polar bear, give me a sponsorship. But I'm going to waste no time. I'm going to jump right in here with RB7. I have Nick Chubb. At first I had him at RB4. All the way back in March. I know that was a long time ago, but now I've bumped him to 7, a little bit lower than I first thought, but I still have him pretty high. He was the RB9 in half PPR this year, RB6 in points per game. He managed to rush for almost 1,100 yards in only 12 games, scoring 12 touchdowns to go with that. And when you look at Nick Chubb as a player overall, he might just be the best pure runner in the league. It's pretty much him and Derrick Henry, and then maybe Dalvin Cook for best just pure runner in the NFL. The dude is an absolute machine. He never goes down on first contact. He makes guys miss, and he's one of the few backs in the league who has true home run potential every time he touches the ball. Anytime Chubb gets a handoff, he could bust it and go 80. He'll probably get like 6 yards anyway, but there's always that chance with him, and that's what makes him so elite. Some individual stats that support that: he was 4th in yards per touch this past year, with 5.9, which is insane for a guy who only had 16 receptions, considering the value and general uptick in yardage you see from a reception and target compared to a carry. He was 2nd in big runs, 1st in juke rate, 6th in evaded tackles, 3rd in breakaway run percentage, 3rd in yards created, and 1st in yards created per touch with 3.15, which means he averaged over 3 extra yards per touch after evading that first tackle. Keep in mind, a lot of these rankings, he's so high in like 2nd in big runs, 6th in evaded tackles, 3rd in yards created. They came in 12 games. If he had a 16-game slate to play, or even 14, he probably would have been 1st or at least top 3 in pretty much all of these stats. The cherry on top of this is that he saw new career highs in yards per route and catch percentage in year 1 of Kevin Stefanski's system, and this system also had the 4th highest run percentage out of anybody in the entire league. Also had the 4th overall O-line, with the 2nd best run blocking O-line. Moving into year 2 with Stefanski, Baker started to look really comfortable at the end of last year. The offense is going to be functioning at a higher level overall. Passing game will probably improve. The running game will definitely improve. Even with Kareem Hunt here, I have no doubt Nick Chubb is the superior talent. And if Kareem Hunt goes down at all throughout the season, Nick Chubb has top 3 upside. The main thing that caps him so much is that he doesn't get the volume that a Derrick Henry gets, although he certainly has the talent to break that 2,000-yard barrier if he were to get that. But if Kareem Hunt goes down at any point, you're looking at a guy who has a legitimate shot to be the RB1. But Hunt this year, he is going to siphon enough touches specifically through the air to make him not quite there with that RB1 overall upside right now. It would require a record-breaking season, kind of similar to the case for Derrick Henry. But even with Hunt here, I am still very confident in Nick Chubb as my 7th overall running back. From Chubb to a man that has been called chubby by many, we have Ezekiel Elliott coming in at my RB8. This is like the 5th offseason in a row Ezekiel Elliott has come in slimmer and better than ever. He actually looks like at this time, but he's probably going to be on some James Harden shit and look fat as hell in like a week. So let's not get too crazy. I think this is a really nice spot for Zeke, and I think it's the start of a group of guys, at least in this set of the rankings, where you probably expected to see them a lot higher, but now you're going to see more of those names that you're familiar with. This was very much the case when Alvin Kamara was down here as well. This past year, Zeke completely underperformed. There's no other way to put it. He severely disappointed people. I faced it firsthand. I traded Dalvin Cook and Devontae Parker for Zeke and Kenny Galladay in week 3 last year. So, right before Dak died, and right before Kenny Galladay died. We don't care about Kenny Galladay. He's whatever. We care about Zeke. But despite losing Dak Prescott so early on in the year, he still finishes the RB11, which isn't great for a guy you're drafting top 3, top 4, but it could have been worse given the fact that half of his offensive line was dead and his quarterback was Ben DiNucci. Ben DiNucci just attempted a sidearm throw in the Hall of Fame game last night, and he probably would have killed a kid in the stands if they had full stands. So that kind of speaks to the talent he was playing with. In those first 4 weeks with Dak, however, the full weeks, I'm not going to count the game where he got injured like a quarter of the way through, he was the RB4 and was the RB6 with a fat 19.2 points per game. With Dak and a relatively healthy O-line at that point, he saw a career-high 7.5 targets per game with 5.8 receptions. I will admit that a lot of this is going to be inflated due to the incredible pace that this Cowboys offense was on. I think Dak was on pace for like 6,500 yards and like 50 total touchdowns. That's obviously, like, you can't sustain that over a whole season. It's just not going to happen. But the encouraging thing is that you saw him get this volume and you saw him get these passing game attempts that he really wasn't getting a lot earlier on in his career. He started to tap more into that dual threat upside that you see a lot of these guys run super high half. A lot of his advanced stats, when you look at them, like juke rate, evaded tackles, yards created per touch, they're basically identical to what they were in 2019. And even in 2018, sure, there's a little bit of a decline between those, but overall, they're all pretty similar. The main difference, though, is the run blocking efficiency. It dropped from 13th in 2019 to 51st in 2020. The main difference between 2019 Zeke and 2020 Zeke was him being a year older and the offensive line completely falling off a cliff and Dak dying in the middle of the field. There's a very good chance your league mates are going to have quite a few guys over Zeke due to this kind of perception that he had a down year. I know that the sentiment is starting to change, but you could still see guys maybe like a Saquon Barkley, maybe a Jonathan Taylor ranked above him that would kind of push him down boards, given that the top four is pretty set in stone with CMC, Cook, Henry, and Kamara in some order, however you want to shape it. He actually might be the 7 for some people, but I wouldn't be shocked if he is a little bit lower. So if his value is a little bit depreciated and there are some of those elite receivers ranked above him, there's a very good chance, depending on league size. When I wrote this originally in March, there was more of a chance, but now I think there's a very low chance you get him in the tail end of the first, early second, but if you can, that's a smash all the way. I have Zeke as my RB8. I think he's due for a big bounce back year, barring the health of his line and the health of his quarterback, both of which seem to be pretty likely to hold up, or at the very least, it doesn't seem like there will be a repeat. Real quick, if you're enjoying my rankings so far, like, comment, and subscribe. I will have more videos coming out pretty much every day over the next God knows how many months. So if you're here for some fantasy football content, you're here for some fun, you're trying to win a championship and watch me lose all the trades I make, this is the spot for you. Now back to your regularly scheduled program. My RB9 is a familiar name that's usually a lot closer to the top of these rankings. It is Saquon Barkley. He has fallen a bit, and I think his fall is more of a legitimate reason than you saw other guys being faded for. When healthy, Saquon Barkley is one of the best running backs in the league. It's undeniable. The dude's talent is fully on display whenever you watch him play, and whenever you watch his highlights, you probably need to change your pants afterwards. We can't forget that during his rookie year, he was the RB2 in fantasy, had over 2,000 yards from scrimmage, 15 touchdowns, and was basically giving you a highlight play every week. It was like Miles Sanders for a whole season, and that would be incredible. If he was fully healthy, I would have no issue putting Saquon Barkley top 3. Maybe top 4 at the absolute lowest, but we know his talent, we know what he can do. But that's the problem. His health at this point is a major if. It's an injury that I feel like people were slightly underestimating at first. Now that we've gotten closer to the season and we've heard more of these talks, people are starting to realize kind of how severe it was. But it wasn't just a normal ACL tear. He tore his MCL and meniscus as well. A normal ACL tear requires around 9 to 12 months of rehab, but he tore the rest of them and they had to wait a month for the swelling to go down. So if you go off that 12-month time period, he fucked his shit up in week 2 last year. You tack on the 4 weeks, that's week 6. If it's a full year, you're looking at a week 6 return, which is incredibly risky for your first-round running back. For your investment to possibly miss around 45% of the season, that's kind of not great. Now there have been talks of him coming back more towards week 2, week 3, possibly even week 1. But I'm really not all that confident that if he comes back that early, we see the Saquon Barkley who put up 2,000 rushing yards. There's been a lot of talk from Joe Judge about slow playing this, not rushing him back, playing the long game. I believe they're due to extend his contract after this year, and there's a very good chance that while they realize that it's going to be rough to pay a running back, they do not want to waste the talent of Saquon Barkley on what could be a down year for him. It's a very interesting spot, and the way they've been talking about this does confuse me. And moving on from the coach speak, because while I generally don't like to lean on it too much, when it comes to injuries, people are generally pretty optimistic. Oh, he'll be back. Oh, Joe Burrow will be ready. Oh, this guy will be ready. He'll be back in no time. It'll be fine. This is a case where we're seeing a little bit more of that hesitance, that maybe not ready just yet, maybe we'll slow the reins, maybe we'll reduce the touch count. So I do think that's something worth monitoring at the very least. Outside of coach speak, though, I'm not sure how ready he is going to be both physically and mentally. He's a guy who is super strong. We've seen the pictures of the dude's legs. Say quads is a very real thing. He's jittery. He kind of plays off that instinctual jump cut, one cut right through the hole. He can make guys miss, and a lot of it seems like it's just like that in second nature for him. If he doesn't have the utmost confidence in his knee and that leg as a whole, we might not see that just yet. He might not have that confidence to make that cut and burst through the hole or make that one guy miss. He might go down or he might kind of fuck up the cut. It's a very real possibility. And if he's not fully confident in it, like I said, I think there's going to be a lot of yards and big plays left on the table. The last guy who really stormed back and just tore ass completely after tearing their ACL and MCL was Adrian Peterson. Saquon is also a freak of nature, so I really wouldn't be shocked if he bounces back this year and puts up a record-breaking performance, but I'm going to be putting a lot more money into Saquon in 2022 than I am 2021. Obviously, with a player of his caliber, a prediction this low can completely blow up in my face. I could look like an idiot by week 8 when Saquon is buying away the RB1, RB2, tearing everybody up with a pretty mediocre offense, whatever the Giants end up being, considering they're fighting each other in fucking practice now, and their first-round receiver doesn't even know how to put his shoes on. It could be a mess, but Saquon Barkley could be that beacon of light, but I'm not ready to count on that just yet. That's why he's my RB9. On to RB10. This is another guy that has fallen quite a bit from March from, I believe, my RB6. We have Jonathan Taylor. Now, if you would have told me around week 10 last year that Jonathan Taylor would have been this high in my running back rankings for this year, I would have thought you were out of your goddamn mind. The first 10 weeks of last year, Jonathan Taylor was god-awful. Dude had no vision, dude had no speed, he had no post move he could recall regularly and go to consistently. Dude looked a lot more like Trent Richardson than he did Edgerrin James, and it was completely awful. My heart was kind of broken. I didn't even have the guy, and I kind of wanted him to do well, but he sucked. But, once week 11 hit, once that Derrick Henry season hit, apparently Jonathan Taylor operates on that same calendar. He broke out in a major way, and he topped off the season with an absolute meat slapping of the Jaguars in week 17. It was absolutely ridiculous. He finished as the RB6 overall, despite being the RB19 from weeks 1 through 10. He was the RB3 from weeks 11 to 17, RB6 if you exclude that last week destruction of the Jacksonville Jaguars. Once he picked up, he showed elite vision, breakaway speed, and the ability to break tackles like no other. We saw the physical freak of a dude who looked more like a linebacker than a running back. He had second in big runs, which are 15 plus yards. He had 12 total touchdowns, was 8th in red zone targets, and was 10th in evade tackles. But one of the most encouraging things was the number 4 run blocking efficiency. Not only was Taylor a blue chip talent, he was running behind an elite offensive line, which only makes things easier. The main worry for me, amongst others, is his involvement in the passing game. He was 29th in targets, but this is a kind of complicated issue. Naheem Hines stole a lot more Hines than Jonathan Wilkins. Fuck, I'm blank. Jordan Wilkins. There we go. Jordan Wilkins. I got it. I'm a good analyst. More than Jordan Wilkins, but they both had a steal. And I think even if that role is diminished due to the loss of Phillip Rivers, who is the running back checkdown king, I think Hines is still going to earn himself some third down targets, a third down role, even if he shows up in the slot and steals some targets. There are targets that Jonathan Taylor's just not going to get. The addition and subtraction of this point with Carson Wentz makes this interesting. Wentz historically targets running backs less than Phillip Rivers, so does pretty much everyone else in the league. And he had a lot of connection issues with Miles Sanders, and it was probably both their faults. Like Carson Wentz couldn't hit the broadside of a barn, and Miles Sanders couldn't catch chlamydia in a fucking glory hole in a dirty New York bar. Let's be honest, even the reports from camp this year saying that Miles Sanders has been eating the popcorn again. It's what he does. Maybe it wasn't all Wentz, it was certainly not all Wentz because you see what Sanders is doing. But neither of them were great. I think that was going to be an issue, but now it's kind of even worse. Because Wentz is hurt, he had surgery, he has to have a bone removed from his foot, and the timetable is anywhere from 5 to 12 weeks. Bizarre timetable, to be quite honest with you, but there's a few outcomes for this. It's either that Carson Wentz is ready for week 1, or Carson Wentz doesn't come back until like week 7. And if he doesn't come back until week 7, The quarterback is most likely Jacob Eason unless they make a move for a vet like a Marcus Mariota, but I don't think they want to do that. So far, they haven't indicated that they want to, but who knows at this point. Either way, with the quarterback, there is some good and bad. If it is Eason, I doubt they let him carry the load. This might be an offense that is funneled through Jonathan Taylor, which could be really good for getting him volume, which is really important, which could cause him to exceed his RB10 ranking. But the offense could also completely fall flat. He could face like 9-man boxes, and he can really not get anything going despite being behind one of the best offensive lines in football. Hopefully Wentz is back because this offense will tick a little bit better, but it's really going to be hard to tell. The Quentin Nelson injury is one that kind of concerns me as well, but he seems like he'll be back for week 1, if not a little bit beforehand. My issue with Jonathan Taylor was never that, oh, Carson Wentz is out, now I gotta fade him. Oh, Quentin Nelson was out, now I gotta fade him. I was always a bit lower on him than everyone else just because it's possible to be an elite running back without the targets, but I feel like he's going to have a decreased type of Derrick Henry role and decreased type of Nick Chubb role, who kind of has a decreased type of Derrick Henry role, where you get a lot of carries, but you don't see that many targets. I think it's possible he might see a few more, but I highly doubt it. It's going to be interesting to see how he plays out. I'm fading him a little bit because of the Wentz news. The ranking is unchanged by the Quentin Nelson news. He should be back for week 1. That's not even going to be a problem to me. To be honest, I've just been lower on Jonathan Taylor than everyone else's. I believe in the talent, but part of the situation doesn't really click with me, and in redraft, the situation is just as, if not more important than talent, as his opportunity, and for those reasons, Jonathan Taylor slots in as my RB10. Continuing the youth movement from last pick, specifically second-round guys, my RB11 is DeAndre Swift. I am very much aware that if you look at the pure production from all of these guys who are going to be in the top 12 so far, and wink wink, DeAndre Swift is by far the most unproven out of any of them, and possibly out of my top 18 as a whole, to be quite honest with you. However, I think he has a ton of untapped potential in the league, and I think we did catch a glimpse of it last year. For the first half of the year, 10 weeks, he was caught in a 3-way committee with Adrian Peterson and Kerryon Johnson, and had a weird brain injury that he managed to get in practice somehow. I don't know what Matt Patricia was doing in practice. I really have no idea. But how do you let your rookie running back you spent a second-round pick on get a bizarre brain injury? Good thing Dan Campbell only fucks with knees around here, and we won't have to worry about a brain. So hopefully things are better for him. But either way, once they made him the starter, he took off in a major way. Even Adrian Peterson was shocked it took so long, honestly, and when Adrian Peterson is like, yeah, this guy should probably get playing time over me, you know you're not making great decisions, and hopefully, thankfully, they got rid of the guy who made those decisions. He was the RB10 in half PPR from weeks 10 to 16 in points per game, and he did miss 3 weeks in that time. I know we are still in the off-season, although we're closer to the regular season, and coach speak, as I've said, is a very real thing. It's kind of hard to ignore, but it is also hard to dismiss the track records and statements of Dan Campbell and Anthony Lynn. Anthony Lynn is a guy who, for better or for worse, regardless of team success, will shove the ball down the throat of whatever running back is alive and playing for your team. He helped Austin Eckler and Melvin Gordon obtain RB1 finishes, not RB1 overall, but RB1, top 10, top 12. And he also helped Kalen Ballage get an RB1 type finish this past year. Kalen Ballage has the ability of the fucking dresser I'm staring at behind my computer. The dude cannot move. He's like Kwame Brown in the post if Kwame had no legs or arms. If he was just a husk of a dude just trying to play basketball. Kalen Ballage is god-awful, and the fact that Anthony Lynn helped him get an RB1 finish should get him sainthood, if we're being quite honest. Besides the point, Anthony Lynn supports high usage RBs. Dan Campbell was the assistant head coach of the Saints, and has said specifically he wants to use Swift in a Kamara-like way, specifically as a slot receiver who can also line up against linebackers. He has said that Jamal Williams is kind of like the Thunder in this offense, which kind of for me speaks to the Latavius Murray role, where you get those 8 to 10 carries a week, but the really high value targets are going to the number 1, who was Alvin Kamara for the Saints, is now DeAndre Swift for the Lions. Coming out of college, we all knew DeAndre Swift had solid receiving chops, but Matt Patricia just didn't let him ride. Matt Patricia is such a problem, and the fact that he's back on my team staff kind of pisses me off, but hopefully Bill puts a collar on him and shocks him every time he tries to do some dumb shit like give our players brain injuries. Please don't do that. Even Jared Goff, who is kind of a bad quarterback, has come out himself and said that he loves checkdowns and he depends on checkdowns too much or something like that. Listen, for actual football, god awful. For fantasy football, I'm loving it. Throw all the checkdowns you want to DeAndre Swift. That just means more targets and more production. So we're looking at both checkdown master type shit and slot receiver type shit from DeAndre Swift. That's incredible upside on the receiving game, and not to mention the guy is a very dynamic runner. He's very explosive. Now there is the red flag, as I've kind of alluded to, that the Lions just probably aren't going to be that good, and that they probably won't score that much, which does cap his touchdown upside, which is why he's a little bit lower than I probably like him to be. But I'm not concerned about things like Jamal Williams. He's brought in here to get some touches and occasionally do pass pro. The crazy thing, though, about football is that you can have a guy in the backfield doing pass pro, and then another guy lined up in the slot or at receiver in general, or even two running backs. Like, it's this magical concept where you can have more than one on the field. One does nothing but block, and the other goes out for targets. It's kind of cool. The potential for Swift to pop the hell off for me is all the way there. I'm betting on the usage and the talent and the situation. I know last slide for Taylor, I was kind of concerned about the situation. I'm somehow less concerned about Swift's situation. I think that's kind of a hot take at this point, because Swift is on an undoubtedly worse team, a far worse team, but I think there's just a greater opportunity there, both in how the games are going to be played and the coaching staff around him, to get a lot of that dual threat upside that you love to see in your running back. I would not be shocked if he cracks top 9, top 8, but I think it will be hard to get into that upper echelon due to the lack of scoring upside that a lot of those guys just simply have, and DeAndre Swift kind of doesn't, which is what cements him as my RB11. Last but certainly not least, the rookie and the vet, the 40-year-old rookie. We have Najee Harris, a new debutant in these rankings that wasn't here last time. Najee is rounding out the top 12. The first-round pick for the Steelers was pretty heralded as a first-round talent this year, although he definitely did benefit from not coming out of an absolutely loaded running back class last year, pouring out for Cam Akers, who should have been here right now. But he's moving on to bigger and better things, hopefully. Coming back from his Achilles tear, Marlon Mack, we need you to show out to give us faith. Aside from the point, Najee lands in probably what is the best situation for a rookie running back outside of maybe what would have been Atlanta and maybe Miami, but honestly I think Pittsburgh is probably the best spot. Last year he tore up the SEC, looked damn good, scored a whole bunch of touchdowns, caught a whole lot of passes, ran a whole lot of carries. He dominated the SEC, which when you're good at football and you play for Alabama, that's what you're supposed to do. But what do his prospects look like in the NFL? Last year, the Steelers' backfield was quite possibly one of the worst, with the perpetually broken James Conner leading the way in front of Benny Snell, who was one of the only bad running backs I've watched play football. Like, there are guys who are okay, like Chase Edmonds is okay, Kenyon Drake is decent, but Benny Snell is bad. I think Kalen Ballage is better than Benny Snell, and that's really not something that should be said about you if you're a running back, that you're worse than Kalen Ballage. Lucky for Benny Snell, Kalen's his teammate this year, so have fun fighting for RB4. Also, Anthony McFarland's on the roster, gotta represent. That's about it. Last year, the running backs received 81 targets in total, however, the lowest number since 2015, which probably has more to do with the fact that no one in this running back room was good at football, rather than the fact that the Steelers have magically moved away from this philosophy. They've pretty comfortably sat around 110 targets to this room ever since 2015, including 2019 and 2018. And neither of those years they had Le'Veon Bell. So this wasn't just we have a really good receiving back, we'll feed him. No, this was we love to pass the ball to the running back, we're going to feed it them. If you're looking at carries, they had 322 total carries last year and 336 in 2019. So in a good year for the Steelers, you're looking at about 440, 450 opportunities for the running backs, which is really good for Najee Harris because multiple times this coaching staff has referred to him as a true third down back, and they'd be almost disappointed if he wasn't. I've said it a lot of times, in the offseason you're ripe with coach speak to pick from and what you want to bite into and what you want to believe. But I think there's more to this than just coach speak because they spent a first round pick on him. You don't spend a first round pick on a guy that you not only are confident in being a 3-down back, but a guy you're not going to use that way. They didn't draft him to be a 2-down plotter, how the Jaguars drafted Travis Etienne, to be a 1-down player who can catch slants and be a wide receiver. They're not that bad at coaching, I don't think, at least not yet. In half PPR for running backs, there is a pretty solid correlation between high touch count and high production and finish. Generally, the more touches you get, the more points you're going to score, the better you're going to do. The only guy who bucks this trend is Alvin Kamara, who gets like 200 touches but takes like 80, 85 catches and just gets like 20 touchdowns every year. But he's the exception, not the rule. And I would not be shocked in the slightest to see Najee clock at least 275 touches. And I really don't think 300 is that far out of the equation. I think it could be higher than 300. If we're being honest, it would probably lean more on the carries and the targets, but 300 is a very possible number. And if you're evaluating the RB finishes over the past 4 years and have PPR for guys with 300 touches, here's what you're looking at. 2020, for guys with 300 touches, they finished RB2, 3, 4, and 8. In 2019, RB1, 3, 4, and 5, 7, 9, 13, and 17. Keep in mind 17 was Le'Veon Bell with the New York Jets, which is a disaster on all fronts. In 2018, the RBs 1, 2, and 3, 5, and 10 all had 300 touches. And then in 2017, RBs 1, 2, 4, 5, 7, and 8, RB9 and 12 had 299 touches, because I feel like I might as well just include them in this list. So outside of the catastrophe that was the Le'Veon Bell experiment in New York, the absolute lowest finish for a guy who's gotten 300 touches in the past 4 years was RB13. So basically, if Najee hits this touch projection, which I really have no issue or doubt that he will, he's pretty much a lock to be a top 12 running back. The question at that point just becomes, how high does he finish? He's going to be running behind what is a putrid offensive line, who lost all of their starters and basically went to my local high school and picked up some fat kids to play offensive line. And a quarterback whose elbow is basically made of overcooked macaroni at this point. God only knows how that's going to go. But this team does seem hell-bent on giving the running back the ball a lot. And they drafted Najee in the first. He's going to be getting a lot of touches both through the air and on the ground. This team, like I said, loves to do it. I say we just pick Najee, accept the fact that he's going to get a lot of touches. They might not be the most efficient. He'll probably score a good bit. They ran a lot of plays last year. They were a pretty good scoring offense, if I remember correctly. He might not have that RB3 type of ceiling, RB1, but when you're getting this many touches, you're almost pretty much a lock to finish top 12. Only 2 guys finished outside of the top 12 with at least 300 touches out of a sample size of like 25. That's a very small sample size. Like I said, when you get this many touches, you're basically a lock to be top 12, and that is why Najee rounds out this list. So to recap one time for you, my RB7 was Nick Chubb, RB8 was Ezekiel Elliott, RB9 was Saquon Barkley, RB10 Jonathan Taylor, RB11 DeAndre Swift, and RB12 Najee Harris. I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you enjoyed seeing who rounds out my top 12, my RB1s. Next video will be 13 through 18, then we'll do 19 through 24, and then we will move on to wide receivers, and then probably tight end, and then probably quarterback. Those will be much shorter because no one cares about tight end after like 8, and no one cares about quarterback after 12, especially in one quarterback league. So let's be honest here. Hope you enjoyed the content. If you did, like I said earlier, leave a like, comment, and subscribe, and peace out.